Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Hi, Allison. Welcome.
Hi, Trisha. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on Finding the Magic podcast. I did a little snooping on your website, and you are my perfect author. So I am super excited to jump in and learn all about your book.
I am super excited to be here and share all of the fun things because there's so many fun things.
Oh, good. So I saw a little bit about dragons. Why don't you just tell me the title of your book, the main kind of plot twist, and a little bit about your characters?
Okay, so my book is called The Spring Maiden. It's the first book in the Cartographer's War series. And I will tell you, people get really sad because it looks like there's only two books because only two books are listed on Amazon, but there are four books. And it is a very light retelling of Hades and Persephone. So lots of fun Greek mythology things, lots of fun little hints and twists with all of that. The main character's name is Penny Barclay, and her whole story is about how she is this plant mage. She has growing magic. She can grow any kind of plant from seed. And her mom run this farm, and they are part of the nobility of this kingdom. So basically, I just took Greek mythology and all the characters, and I just stuck it in a fairy dragon mage world instead of letting them sit around on Mount Olympus. And so there's a rebellion going on. There's lots of magic. There's lots of intrigue and romance and all of the fun things.
Very cool. Yeah, I looked at a little bit about your synopsis. I didn't find where the dragons fit in, so I'm interested to learn about that. But yeah, it definitely sounds like a character who's been stifled by her mother and has lots of rules surrounding her and goes rogue a little bit. Am I right about that?
Yes, there's definitely some rebellion of the heart as well as some actual kingdom rebellion things going on. Lots of fun stuff. And there will be dragons, I promise. They're just not in book one yet. And it's going to be really fun.
How many? So it sounds like this is a world you create completely built. Is that right?
Yes, this isn't like I've taken lots of different pieces. We've got lots of like Irish, Scottish, Gaelic folklore. We have lots of Greek mythology. We have I even had it kind of put into almost like a Regency era time. The technology is very much the same. The structuring, the social structuring is the same as well. And so you get kind of this smorgasbord of just really fun things that I like that I just stuck together and made a story with.
I love those. Yeah, I love all that. And do humans exist in this world or in an alternate world? Or is it just a world unto its own?
So there are humans, 100%. It is very much I don't know, like a medieval fantasy kind of thing, right? Like you always have human factions, then you have other factions. You have fae factions, there's merfolk in it, there's all these little creatures. But yes, there is human faction. The mages in the story are technically humans just with magic, but there are regular humans, and then there's all kinds of other creatures too.
And are the humans aware of all these different creatures?
Yes. Yes. In the history of the story, the humans fought off the fae. The fae were basically gods to them, right? And so the humans rebelled and they fought off the fae, and they are isolated on another part of the continent. And we go into a lot. There's this mist around fairy that kind of separate the humans from the fae. And you do have crossover. Um, there's been treaties and things signed over the years since this war, and you do have Fae in the human realm now, but there is definitely still some tension between the two kingdoms, and it's very, very fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I have a Fae series too, and when I wrote it, I was really new to Fae. I hadn't read a lot of Fae, and then afterwards, I started reading Fae, and I was like, oh, I broke most of the rules of the Fae. So I was like, but it's fantasy, so I can make up my own rules. So that was
Yes.
great.
That's the very nice part, because there are, especially with Fae mythology, there are lots of rules, right? And so like you can't, like Fae can't cross running water when they're using magic, because it diminishes the magic, or it cancels out the magic, right? And so, but like a lot of people don't know that. And so when you are creating these Fae worlds and stuff, you can kind of wiggle around the rules a little bit more than, say, like science fiction, where we all know how gravity works and we all know how like all of these other things work, right? And so you have to be a little bit more realistic. But with this, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I can kind of just have a dragon not have legs and it's fine. And then you get this whole nother type of dragon, which I feel like a lot of dragons have come out of that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that thing about water until I started doing a lot of research. And then I went back and read the Vampire Diaries. And in the books for the Vampire Diaries, the vampire powers diminish across running water too. And I was like, oh, that was an interesting thing that she brought in. So, yeah.
And it's really fun with the different, because like vampires are very, oh, I can't even remember what mythology that they're really attached to. I think it's like Germanic, but they, all of these mythologies and all of these like lore, folklore and all that stuff, they always cross over. And so what's nice is that there's kind of like these overarching rules, right? But then it's still good. It's still nice to have like this list of rules to be able to pick and choose from when you're writing stories with these kinds of creatures in them, right?
So I'm assuming you do tons of research for your writing.
Lots of research. Wikipedia and Britannica encyclopedias are my friend. Like, we do a lot of research, yes.
And there's lots of, like, I found this whole website about Fae and a listing of all the different websites about Fae. So any like creature that you want to research, you can find someone who is in love and over the top about this and has collected all the information that you would ever want to know.
Yes. And what's really nice is, for me at least, I have a husband that is a dungeon master for D&D. And so I will can ask him like, okay, I'm talking about these creatures. What are the rules in D&D that you guys have had too? Because they're like, the source books for those are very heavily influenced by the actual folklore, by the like other authors that have written in with those creatures or in those worlds or whatever. And so that's really nice for me to just like be able to turn over and be like, hey, I'm writing about, what was the, I think I was writing about uh dryads or something. I was researching dryads, and I turned to him, I was like, okay, in D&D, what are the rules on dryads? And so a lot of things that I was researching for other stories came up with that. And so there's so much material out there for these creatures and all of these things. It's very fun.
Yeah, that's cool to know. Yeah, my sons are really into D&D. So when I need some evil characters to like threaten my Fae world, I always go, okay, what do these evil characters do? Which ones can I use? And what powers do they have? So
Good resources.
Definitely. And how long has your the Spring Maiden, how long has that been out?
It actually just came out this month. So October 3rd, it published. So
Okay.
I'm very new.
Congratulations. That's so exciting. And are you self-published or are you with a publisher?
I am with a publisher. My publisher is I'm in the Primera imprint of Oliver Huber Books. It is a less known publisher, but it is a very good publisher. So I'm very grateful to be part of their group. They publish authors like Jeff Wheeler, Sherilyn Kenyon. They have my brain just like totally Colleen Callahan. They've had a lot of a lot of really awesome best-selling authors in their group. So I feel very privileged to be listed with some of these amazing, amazing authors.
That is super fun. Yeah, congratulations, doubly
Thank
congratulations.
you so much. It's been a treat for sure.
Okay, and this is in the YA space, so I'm assuming it's a clean read, correct?
It is a clean read. There isn't anything untoward at all. I think I made up all my own cuss words even. Like it's not anything like I wanted to create a book that anybody could read. And so that was my main part. I mean, there is romance in it. And throughout the series, that romance definitely develops, but it is never ever explicit. It is all very formal, very proper, very, in the books.
Did you do a lot of research about the courting rituals in that time, like the Regency time period too?
Okay, I am a giant Regency book like eater. I will just like feast on. I'm on a binge right now of Regency books and I really love them. And so you kind of learn a little bit of things, but yes, there has been research for like, okay, what can I avoid? What do I have to avoid? What do I have to like look into? And so yes, there is a little bit of that into play. You have betrothals and you have marriage contracts and you have all of these things that are included in the book. But there's definitely like, especially with YA, you don't want it to be too proper, right? We're having Penny's a rebellious soul, right? We're having some rebellion. And so yes, Penny's romance isn't necessarily by the book, but it is still a very clean, very sweet romance.
Well, and I think I've heard about what inspired you. How do you name your characters? Do you just think of their names?
um it depended on the character for me for this. So I especially for some of my bigger characters, I wanted their names to sound like their Greek mythology counterparts. So like Penelope sounds like Persephone, and Penelope is a Greek mythology name. It's from the Odyssey. And so I felt a little bit funny using that as a like substitute, but like it just fit her character really well. And they call her Penny. She's called Penny in the book. It just fits her character really well. Another character you see that with is Paolo, is one of Penny's friends, and it's Apollo, and it sounds similar. But like Apollo's twin, Artemis in the book is Diana, which is her Roman counterpart name. But like all of the other characters, the Zeus character, his name is Dion, and the etymology of those names is very similar. And so a lot of the names in there too are just names in different dialects that mean the same thing. So but there's lots of fun names. And it's what I like about it is that you can see who's who in the story. You don't ever have to question like, oh, is this character this god or this god? Like you can always look it up and figure out who it is.
Neat. That's a lot of fun. And I'm surprised. Like, do you have a degree in mythology, or is
No.
it all like self-study?
I just have an obsession.
I think all authors have an obsession to some degree. Like I talk to people about my books and I tell them how many I published and they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, it's an obsession. Just don't try to understand it.
Yeah, it really is. It really started, this story kind of evolved from, I was obsessed with this web comic. It was on DeviantArt. It was called Punderworld, I think. It was a Hades and Persephone comic, and I was obsessed with it, and I loved it. And she hasn't finished the comic yet, and so I get to the end of what she had, and I was like, I need more. I need other things. And I went looking, and what I found, I didn't love. And so I was like, there has to be more than this. Like, I wanted the magic, I wanted all of these things. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself. So I did. And my obsession grew. And now I have this entire world with all of these characters. And it's been a ride for sure.
Super, super fun. And, like while you're talking, I remembered a question and now it left my brain.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So what other authors do you read?
If it is between the cover of between two covers, I read it. Um, anything. I love fantasy books. I will stand on a hill and scream Jeff Wheeler's name for all eternity. Like I everything that he's written, I have loved. Um, I yeah, like especially YA. I walk into Barnes and Noble and my husband's like, "We can't even go here over here to buy books because you've read all of these already." Like I anything YA, anything fantasy. I just finished Chloe Gong's Foul Lady Fortune and Foul Heart Huntsman. Those books were insane. Like I am just I obviously I'm on a Regency binge. I read everything. I love books. I've always loved books, and so my one little bookshelf behind me is not very telling, but I have tons of books in my crawl space of my house underneath that are it's just boxes and boxes of books.
I know my husband we are doing some remodeling and I had to move all my books and he's like, well, you don't need these. And I'm like, no. And so I started like you, I started hiding them in different places around the house. And like little by little, though, he started to find them. I see what you're doing.
Like, these are my emotional support books. I need these.
Yes, they are. They're getting me through.
These are my friends.
And that's why I'm in this weird office now with bikes and ski gear. This is my temporary office, but I put my poster up. So.
Very cute. No, it's a great
and
office.
I think I've gotten what?
Sorry. It's a great office.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think I've gotten a little bit from this, but if there's one thing that you want your readers to experience when reading your books, what would you say that is?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would love for readers to feel seen. I have very different, very dynamic characters in this story, and a lot of them are have very deep stories. And I'm not just and Penny's story is her own story, right? Like, and people are going to connect with her, but there are so many characters in these books that I think people are going to fall in love with just because of who they are and that they are relatable. And so, if anything, like I just want them to feel seen and I want them to be able to live in a world that they feel seen in. That they feel like they can go fight dragons, that they can go beat a rebellion, that they can overcome the challenges of the real world because they watch these characters that they're relating to overcome the crazy challenges in their world.
Very cool. Yeah, that's the thing I love about fantasy. Even as a young kid and as a teenager, when I read fantasy, I did feel like, oh, I'm seeing myself in this character or seeing this. And I did feel like it was helping me to relate. I've heard people say, oh, no, fantasy is so bad because they get out of the real world. And I'm like, whoa, this is like a safe space to like experience and learn and figure things out where it's not the stakes are not high, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it helps us to remember that life isn't as bad as we might think it is or as it could be.
Hopefully for most people. We'll go with that hope. And tell me why the series is called The Cartographer's War.
So the cartographer is a character in the book. The cartographer is the leader of this crazy rebellion. And there are lots of really fun twists with this character that readers are going to hate. They're going to love it, but they're going to hate it. It's going to make them cry.
Okay. And what kind of character is this cartographer?
So I don't want to give any spoilers away because this is a big part of this story is this character. The cartographer is this, and at the beginning of this book is this entity that has started this rebellion. Nobody knows who they are. Everybody's looking for them, but they are what they are trying to do in this book is to get rid of magic altogether. They're basically trying to start a witch hunt especially for the Fae. And so for Penny specifically, the stakes are high because she is magical. She has powers. And so this rebellion begins kind of in her lands. She's an heiress to a duchy. And so it within her lands, this rebellion is starting to take root, and she's starting to see a lot of hurt and hate towards people like her. And so that is the big overarching stake, is that if Penny doesn't help fix this, especially because she is going to be the overseer of these lands when she inherits it, if she doesn't help get rid of this, then one, all of her people are going to be in danger, and she's going to be in danger too.
Right, and their livelihoods too, right? Because
yes.
I mean, they're growing these plants, I'm assuming, for people to eat or sell.
Yes.
Very cool. And what point of view is this written from? Is this from Penny's point of view, or is this a third person? Or
it is third person, but it is third person, limited, deep point of view, or whatever. So you are mostly in Penny's head, even though Penny is saying her name instead of I. And right. So you are third person, yeah.
Okay, cool. I was wondering if this was like omniscient third person, because that is like one of the hardest things to write.
It's super and hard to read, I feel like, too. But no, it's you're very much with Penny on this adventure, and meeting and becoming friends with her friends, and fighting bad guys with her hands, and all of that kind of stuff. You're very, very much with Penny the whole time.
Well, that sounds super fun. I am going to have to pick up this book. Tell us where we can find it.
Anywhere. It is available everywhere online. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, all of the places. So you can order it pretty much from anywhere. Independent booksellers also, you can order it from them too. Very cool. I always like to go to your independent booksellers, people. They are keeping us alive.
Definitely. So that kind of leads me to my next question. The Spring Maiden. What is the significance behind that title?
So it's Penny's name. Oh, so okay. in Greek mythology, before Persephone becomes queen of the underworld, she is known as Kori, which translates to maiden. And so she's only known as the girl, the maiden, this person. And I thought that was really influential for Penny's story, that she and spring. So Persephone, Kori, is known as the goddess of spring and nature. And so I wanted to kind of incorporate who she was into the title at the beginning of the book. She is very much, you definitely don't get spring maiden vibes from Penny by the end of the book. But I just wanted to show like that Penny starts this book as an innocent, as a child. And by the end of the book, you very much see her growth and her determination to overcome.
Very fun. Very fun. I love that about characters. I love when, a character becomes passionate about something, and then they are able to, however they can influence what's going on in their world. It's just it inspires me, and it's super fun. What other shows or books inspire and excite you? Especially in the YA fantasy.
Yes. Okay. But I mean, so many things, right? I am a horrible TV watcher. I'm really bad at it. I really like movies though. And so Pride and Prejudice, and I am a sneaky author. I sneak things into the books super hard. So there is a tip of a hat to Pride and Prejudice in this book. There's, I don't know, a lot. There's so many things. Let's see, what other books? Holly Black, the Folk of Air series, was a huge influence on this series. I loved Jude and Carden's like, you could see the tension between them just by race, by class, all of that kind of stuff. And I loved how that played out. I really loved that court system. I really liked the world building, all of that stuff. So that was a really big influence for this series. Another one, oh man, and it's been a while, when books come out, like it's been a while since you were thinking about the book and like getting influence for the book. Like I wrote this book in 2021, and so it's been 2 years since I sat down and thought about, oh, this book got influenced by this. I don't know, just so many things. I Greek mythology. I loved the Percy Jackson books and how they kind of like combined mythology with real human beings, like they really humanized the gods and all of that kind of stuff. Like that was a big influence on this series. Yeah, just all of the things. I love the folklore, I love the mythology, I love regencies, all of that kind of just jam packed into this
Yeah, that
series.
was so interesting to me. Like the YA fantasy world coming to Regency. That was like, I'm like, wow, that seems like two completely different things.
It's really fun. It's very fun,
Yeah.
especially because I mean, you usually have regencies in there because there's usually age gap, I feel like, in the romances. And romances are usually targeted for adults, right? But I love the systems of Regency era society. Like I really love like you read a Regency book and the whole time you're on your toes because you're like, they're not allowed to be in a room by themselves, you know? And so you're like the tension is so thick there. And I wanted that, especially with clean fiction, it's hard to get away with that. But when you have those rules and it's very obviously established, it's very easy. It's kind of a cheat, actually. I kind of cheated, I'll be honest. To increase the tension by adding these societal norms or societal protocols. And
Oh,
so yes, usually regencies are considered adult or considered romances, but if you look, especially the female characters are often a lot younger and in that YA range. And so it was really easy to convert that into a YA book and just especially like lessen the age gap and make these characters all be more teenagers rather than and like young adult teenagers, not necessarily the younger young adults. But make them these characters that are young but are mature because of the way that their society is set up, which I feel like young adults are often a lot more mature than we give them credit for.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, my kids are older than I want to admit. But anyway, I remember being that age. You have a car and you have a job, and I mean, my son was 17 and he was a manager at Five Guys. So I mean, like
Yeah,
he was
like
managing
really.
like people twice his age. So they are very capable of a lot of things. And I feel like it's sort of a rule that happens sometimes, and I did this in my fantasy books too. It's like you can't have too many adults in those, because if there were too many adults in their lives, the adults would have reined them in, right? So
Yes.
it has to be something where they only have one parent, or or they lost their parents, and they get more freedom because of that.
There's always the orphan trope, right? That
Right,
everybody
right.
uses for YA. No, I agree with that. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely a stigma in YA that like, yes, 17-year-olds should not be generals over an army. I agree with that. I feel like that's very unrealistic. But as I said before, I feel like there are a lot of young adults that do not get as much credit as they should for being responsible for their own lives. And so, and I was one of those. I wasn't necessarily um was not recognized for my wasn't unrecognized for my maturity, but I was a teenager who was very mature. And so I was like, I know that that's realistic. I know what those people feel like. I mean, I'm not as old as a lot of these authors are. I'm 28. Like I was a teenager only 10 years ago, guys. It's not hasn't been too long. I haven't forgotten.
Right.
But I just feel like they I feel like teenagers get a lot of slack for being immature when actually a lot of them are a lot more mature than a lot of people think they are.
When you factor in the fact that their lives and their livelihood and their people are now threatened, I mean that
Yes,
adds the extra hay.
100%.
Yeah.
And what's nice is, especially when you're using a timeline that isn't necessarily like our timeline, our years are a lot we use them a lot differently than 100 years ago, 200 years ago. So if I'm in a 1800s kind of era, like these people are getting some people are getting married at 15 and 16, right? Like they're adults by this time. And so there is definitely a little bit of cheating you can do when you are setting medieval or whatever those eras, that you can kind of get away with having younger characters and targeting it to a younger audience. Um, but yeah, they were so much more adult than even I am now. like the things that they had to think about. They only lived till they were like 35 in the 1500s, right? And so that's not a very long time. You got to do a lot of stuff in that time, right? And so you can kind of get away with that when you are using older eras, basically is what I'm trying to say.
Neat. Well, it does sound like this book will cross over to not only people who are young adults themselves, but older readers who love YA fantasies, and because you do incorporate the mythology, the Regency, all of those world building things. So I think,
like I said, yes, I wanted it to be something that everyone could read, and so I tried to hit the points.
I'm feeling the trifecta here. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. And this is going to release tomorrow, so we won't have to wait long to get it into the reader's hands. And I will be sharing my link on my Finding the Magic podcast on Facebook, as well as other media. So tell us everywhere we can find you when we're looking for you.
Oh, you can Google me and it'll pop up. But I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Threads, all of the things. Usually you can find me under Allison Anderson Author. My website is AllisonAndersonAuthor.com. But yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. And The Spring Maiden, again, is available anywhere you can buy books. So.
Well, thank you again. The Spring Maiden just released this month, and the second book is coming out next year, so we don't have to wait very long, only about 6 months, I saw.
Yes, we were very lucky with that timeline.
And it looks like you have many more to come. So again, congratulations, and thank you for being on my show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.